So hello from Green-Mopeds at Strawberry Hill. So today we thought we'd give you a quick rundown of the differences between the Sur-Ron LBX LightBee off-road version on the right and the road legal version on the left. There has been quite a few questions about what's the differences and where can they be ridden, etc, etc. So we thought we'd cover that. Essentially the thing to remember is that the road legal version on the left can be driven where and only where a vehicle can be driven. So if you think of it as a car, you can't ride it in parks and you can't ride it off-road because it's road legal. It's been homologated and had features added to it which make it so. For example, it has mirrors, it has indicators at the front, it has indicators at the back, and it has a horn, although the off-road version does have a horn as well. So the off-road version, which is the one on here, because of the speed that it goes, which is up to 47 miles an hour, it actually cannot be ridden on the roads. It can be ridden on trails and things like that, but because of the speed and the fact that you don't need a helmet, for example, whereas obviously on the road legal version you need insurance, it will need an MOT after 3 years, you need to have a license to ride it. The off-road version, you don't need any of that, but it can only be ridden on things like trails and private land, for example. Okay. Having said that, you can have a pedal kit fitted to the off-road version, and again, although you can have the pedal kit fitted technically to the road legal version, you're not actually allowed to because it's a vehicle. Just to confuse everybody. So just to focus a little bit on the off-road one at the beginning. So as you can see, it's got a light which is slightly different to the road legal version. It has a speedometer, which here you can see is currently showing its maximum speed. You have this ability to switch modes between eco and sport. So sport would give you this 50 mile, 47 mile an hour speed. As you can see here, it does have this horn. And you'll see when I show you the road legal version that there is slightly different setup. Here is this X controller that everyone talks about, and the controllers are the brains of the bikes. Okay, so most of the things that might go wrong with this bike electronically are down to what goes on within the X controller. Okay, here you can see that the brakes are what on the face of it look like fairly low spec, but they are certainly good enough for this bike. And what you also might notice is that these particular ones, I don't know if you can see that from the focus there, these have got DNM shocks. Okay. As I mentioned before, there's a lot of things that you can change about this bike. For example, you can change the rear sprocket, so you can get sprockets with more teeth on them, 58 tooth for example, and you would then get a bigger chain to deal with that. That would give you more torque, which, you know, again might help you if you wanted to do very steep inclines, etc, etc. These bikes can do wheelies because they are so light, in fact 47 kilos, that they can actually literally stand on their rear wheel, and you'll probably see that on other videos that have been out there. Okay, so just be aware of that. When people come and they actually try these bikes, it's best not to start off in sport mode, because until you get used to it, it can actually create quite a impression, let's say. Okay, so the battery is obviously sitting in the middle there, to give you a better sort of view of it. And as you can see, there's not a lot to these bikes. They weigh 47 kilos. They're about 1.87 meters long. 47 kilos is very light, and in actual fact it makes it too light for the road legal version to be on the government OLEV grant. So the current price of this bike is 4,495 for the road legal version and 3,995 for the off-road version. Okay, but again, you cannot buy this one thinking you can ride it on the road, and you cannot buy this one thinking you can ride it in private land, and well, you can ride it in private land, but not on trails and things like that. So here's the battery. It's a 60 volt 32 amp hour battery. It's quite easily removed. You simply open the lid and then you unclip these connectors. Just another comment about the capabilities of these bikes. So as I said at the beginning, this bike, the road legal version, is homologated to do 28 miles an hour on the road, which means that it's actually been restricted. And the reality of that is that this sport mode button, which you saw on the other bike, is essentially disabled on this road legal version. Okay, so it is essentially the form that it comes out of the box, it is classed as a moped, a 50cc bike that does 28 miles an hour. Okay, so you would say, well, why can it not do 47 mile an hour like the off-road version? That is simply a restriction put on this bike, even though the capabilities are greater. So what I mean by that is that from a license perspective, you need to have a P category on your license. Okay, which means that anyone who's got a full driver's license is able to ride this bike out of the box. However, it is possible to make this bike the same performance as the off-road version. So the way you do that is to actually de-restrict it, and there are places where you can find out how to do that, but essentially it involves this wire here. And what will happen is, if you choose to de-restrict it, it will then activate this button and you will get the 47 mile an hour out of it. You would obviously need to then tell your insurer, and it then becomes a 125cc equivalent bike, which therefore means that you would have to do a CBT, possibly put L plates on it as well, or have an A1 license. Okay, so again, something that is slightly confusing, that the same bike technically, one only does 28 mile an hour out the box and one does 47 mile an hour out of the box. Okay, but it's purely a restriction put on it by the fact that this was made road legal. Okay, and there could be in the future in fact there is a new Sur-Ron coming out called a Storm, which is actually more powerful anyway, but as I said, this bike could be made to go 47 mile an hour like its off-road version. Okay, so just to sort of finish off really, so this is the rear section of the bike. As you can see, it's got a mud guard. Again, the off-road version doesn't. Here you can see that the light is underneath the saddle. The maximum carrying capacity of this bike is 100 kilos. Okay, so that's your sort of weight limit in terms of what you can actually do. In terms of colours, it's actually a sort of moving target, to be honest. Different colours come in with each shipment. So for example, this red one currently is special order only, as is the orange in the road legal one. This black one is fairly new in terms of the off-road version, but mostly in the road legal version there are colours like silver, grey and blue, and then there's some more choice of colours on the off-road version. Okay, so I hope that hasn't been too confusing. Essentially, just remember that this one's 4,000, this one's 4,500, because it's had all of the road legal aspects done to it, you know, testing, additional bits and pieces put on the bike. But this one you can take where you can take a vehicle, and only that. And this one you essentially cannot take where you can take a vehicle. Okay, obviously you're welcome to come around down to Green-Mopeds and have a test ride of them, and any questions, please feel free to drop us an email at hello@greenmopeds.com. Thanks very much.